Our gardens are beautiful enough. Why do there have to be fairies at the bottom of them?
Until something happens to me, I have no explanation for that other than it was the supernatural, and I will believe. So if you want to convince me, then do something to me.
Since 2014, actors and writers Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith have been delighting audiences with their unpredictable anthology series, Inside No. 9. As the genre-hopping show is known for its wild and shocking plot twists, the only thing viewers know to expect is the unexpected. Every time you think you've got a grip on how fantastic they are, they do something so different that it reveals a whole new aspect of genius you never knew existed. One such episode is their Halloween special, Deadline, and that's before even considering the fact that it was performed live. This is how Deadline's blend of reality and fiction made it terrifying. If you haven't seen this episode, there are obviously spoilers ahead, so check it out now.
Go to BBC iPlayer, watch the programme, then come back and then we can talk.
You won't regret it. Unless you plan on sleeping tonight, that is. Because it's
so terrifying that if you witness it, you will literally shit yourself. You will. It's horrible.
But whatever happens, don't stop watching.
Tonight, Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith are tricking and treating us to a live edition of the award-winning Inside No. 9. Expect very strong language, scenes which some viewers may find disturbing, and of course, the unexpected.
Deadline starts off as your typical Inside No. 9 episode. After the continuity announcement and the opening credits, we see the 9 on the location as you see the title. There were a few things that regular viewers could expect from every episode. The episode always takes place entirely within a location that is labelled No. 9. This is often a house or an apartment, like it is here, but it has included an office, a dressing room, a karaoke booth, and even a boat. Arthur Flitwick, an old man played by Pemberton, arrives home and gets a mysterious phone call. The next part of the criteria is Reece Shearsmith or Steve Pemberton performing in the episode. At that time, the only episodes in which both of them had not appeared were the Series 1 episodes The Last Gasp and The Harrowing. Arthur then calls an old lady called Moira, played by Stephanie Cole, to find out that it's not his phone, but he found it in the local graveyard. He's calling the last number the phone dialed to find out who it belonged to. She tells him that the owner was called Elsie, and she recommends asking the local vicar, Reverend Neil. The scene transitions from day to night, and the Reverend, played by Shearsmith, says something you can't hear. Once the music fades out, the sound goes completely dead. However, it soon works again, and it sounds like Elsie has died. The Reverend is also acting somewhat suspiciously.
We're always on the lookout for new blood.
Now's a good time to mention another part of the Inside No. 9 criteria. Some mix of comedy and drama. Whilst the show is often referred to as a horror comedy anthology series, there are plenty of episodes without horror in them at all. Some are black comedy, some are thrillers, some are indeed horror, often the final episode of the series. They even did an episode combining the heist movie genre with commedia dell'arte.
I guess because they both use masks, which is quite clever in a way, but still sounds like something a drama teacher would have a wank to.
It's much like the early series of Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected, in that there's a sense of the writer's voice that resonates throughout the show, which is only emphasised by the fact that we are constantly watching the writers in the episode. Considering the fact that the two are well known for their love of horror, and the fact that their last Halloween special, the one for their previous series Psychoville, took a much darker tone than the rest of the series, a horror episode was certainly what viewers were expecting this time round. The only thing that viewers can really expect from the script is that it's the same two guys who wrote it, and there's always a twist. This often comes towards the end of the episode and recontextualises everything that came before it, making them a delight on rewatch. Not all episodes have a single twist that the whole thing rests on. Much like magicians, they are masters of misdirection. Not only do they have plenty of red herrings, but there are plenty of episodes where there are multiple twists, which is fantastic misdirection, because we're usually so preoccupied with the foreshadowing of the first twist that the second twist comes completely by surprise. So, It feels like a very normal episode of Inside Number 9 so far. So normal, in fact, it feels like that ABK every episode of Inside Number 9 sketch.
Hello, I'm a horrible little man who could be the devil, or maybe a ghost.
Oh, hello. I'm another man who seems nice but could be a paedophile.
You don't know, do you?
You don't know.
You don't know.
You just don't know.
You just don't know.
Just as the Reverend is about to take the phone, Arthur tells him that Elsie's daughter is to pick up the phone instead. Moira then calls and the sound cuts out again. This time, you get a continuity announcer telling you that they are having technical issues with the sound and will try and fix it as soon as possible. After a little music, it returns to Inside Number 9. You get a glimpse of the brass hair Easter egg that appears in every episode, but, alas, the sound still isn't working. The continuity announcer comes back on again, saying that the live episode will sadly have to air at a later date, and that BBC Two will instead show the Series 1 episode A Quiet Night In. And so, the fan favourite slapstick comedy episode begins. Exactly 9 minutes in to the broadcast. We get the opening titles, a zoom in on the 9 of the location, and the episode starts exactly as it always does. At this point, 20% of the audience had already turned over. Most of the other 80 just wanted to watch or rewatch A Quiet Night In, but a few of them had grown suspicious. After all, wasn't it rather odd that, after having issues with the sound, they showed the episode featuring silent comedy?
I am here for this! This is amazing! Oh my god! Oh, I am focused, alright.
Therefore, most viewers would have been focused on the screen when the classical music in the background starts to sound odd, like it was being warped or slowed down. If you've seen this episode before and are paying close attention, you may have started seeing the silent singer because something doesn't look quite right.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other by the time I finish this song?
This is where viewers knew for certain that this was their plan all along. So, first off, was it really filmed live? Many people assumed that it was another aspect of the episode that was fake, but yes, it really was filmed live, and there are not only plenty of interview clips to support this, but there is also the vlog of composer Chris Henson, who performed the score live. They were actually planning on putting the episode up for the BAFTA for Best Live Broadcast, but it was sadly around 25 seconds short of actual live footage, as it needs to be 70% live in order to count. A live narrative show is pretty rare, or at least it is in the 21st century. However, considering the fact that Pemberton and Shearsmith both cut their teeth on the stage and pulled off the Psychoville episode, David and Maureen, in 2 unbroken shots, they seemed like the perfect candidates. When the BBC suggested it, the two dismissed the idea at first.
We thought, well, everyone does them now, EastEnders do them. We just thought it would look like a ropey version of Inside Number 9, and that was not what we would want to put out.
However, it was when they thought of the illusion of faking something going wrong during the broadcast that they took up the idea. Deadline was intended as a hoax, and they made the wise move of only revealing this a third of the way into the episode. Keeping up the act that long, any viewers that may have suspected that the interruptions were intentional would probably be convinced by now that it was for real. Then it cuts abruptly to a static shot of the empty kitchen set, which is somehow one of the most unnerving moments of the whole episode for me, before cutting back to the continuity announcer, who is trying and failing to remain calm whilst attempting to reassure the audience. But you can hear that she's not alone.
As I was saying, as soon as we've identified the issue... Hello? Is someone there?
From here on, the BBC have lost control. Not only have they lost control, but you, the viewer, have as well. Unless, of course, you're simply too scared to keep watching. The fact they revealed the episode to be a hoax with these 2 jump scares means that you spend the next 20 minutes with a sense of building anxiety, our eyes scouring the screen for the next spectre, watching the three characters in the studio prattle on oblivious to the danger that awaits them, desperate to warn them of their ultimate fate. I've seen plenty of comments from people saying that the episode lacks all impact when you see it now, knowing the interruptions are fake, but I couldn't disagree more. I'm sure it was a very different and much scarier experience actually getting pranked by the episode live. But even though I knew what the premise of the episode was going in, it still scared me shitless. I struggled to watch reviews of the episode on YouTube. I struggled to go on the Inside Number 9 subreddit because part of me was scared that I would see the jump scare in the banner. Let me repeat that. This episode made me terrified of a rollover animation on a website. It's that good. From here on, the ghosts are our directors, our DOPs, and our editors. They are in control of everything you see. They are, in essence, the silent narrator. They won't speak to us directly, not yet anyway, but they are putting together a mosaic of footage from our world to communicate with us from the other side. The BBC's facilities are their Ouija board. Therefore, whenever we see something, we must ask ourselves what they are trying to tell us. It abruptly cuts to CCTV footage of the studio, first panning to show Stephanie Cole in the green room, before showing what appears to be a shot from one of the abandoned studio cameras, showing us the flat set that we've already seen, as well as a graveyard set. It then cuts to the first of many archived clips, footage of Bobby Davro on the 90s show Public Enemy No. 1, when the pillory he was in fell over, hitting his head on the concrete floor.
Oh, Bobby! Oh, Jesus, stop!
We then see CCTV footage of Reece and Steve in their makeup room. Steve has just talked to one of the producers and updates Reece on the possibility of doing the episode either later that night or at a later date, depending on when or if the sound issue gets fixed. He also says that the crew are in a meeting somewhere upstairs, as well as letting him know that they are repeating A Quiet Night In. Reece complains and asks why they don't just share their rehearsal taping from that afternoon instead. He then manages to get onto Twitter.
What is going on with Inside Number 9 is this part of the twist, so I do fuck off.
It then cuts to an episode of Most Haunted, a ghost hunting show from the 2000s, about Granada Studios. You see a historian telling us that the studios had been the location of many ghost sightings over the years, before showing a psychic talking about sensing a ghost from a member of crew, who died about 10 years earlier from a heart attack. Or an accident. It then cuts back to the CCTV footage of the green room, where you can see Stephanie getting up to answer the phone. It cuts to an abandoned camera on the set, and you see Stephanie answer the phone and talk to someone called Alan. The prop phone from the episode. It then cuts back to Steve reading Reece an article about the seemingly cursed happenings at studios in Manchester, such as the Bobby Davro incident.
Bobby, Jesus, Bobby.
A fire that gutted the sets for a costume drama at Granada Studios, and the suicide by hanging of a prop man by the name of Alan Starr on Halloween night 10 years prior, leading to an exorcism at the studios in 2017.
So that's where we are, brilliant.
Granada Studios is a television studio in Manchester that was owned by Granada Television, the ITV franchisee for the North West and the Isle of Man. Although it was best known as the filming location of Coronation Street for over 50 years, it was the location of many BBC and ITV shows until its closure in 2013, after which it was sold to Manchester Council and property developers Allied London. They had been planning on converting it into residential property before deciding in 2017 to reopen the studios the following year due to demand for studio space. There was an article published in The Sun about the hauntings 2 days before the broadcast, saying that Inside Number 9 had pulled out of filming there because of the reports of ghost sightings, and then recounted the various sightings on the set of Coronation Street. We obviously now know that it's not why they pulled out, but by telling the press that, I'm guessing via a press release, it was inevitable that one or two tabloids would pick it up and refresh the memories of their potential audience, and advertise the episode to boot. But was that Most Haunted episode real? Yes. Well, That must mean the hauntings are real, right? Well, the historian's statements about the many ghost sightings at Granada and the studio being built on a graveyard of the local church are true. But Most Haunted was known for having a, let's say, debatable connection to reality. After their resident medium, Derek Okora, was caught faking his possessions, the show was investigated by British broadcast regulator Ofcom, who found that the show was purposefully misleading. But it was fine because it was an entertainment show and not to be taken seriously. This actually adds to the blurring of the lines between fiction and reality, as you can almost certainly tell that the clip is real, but not necessarily that the actual stories being told here are. If you're curious, you can watch the full episode on YouTube. The footage of the Bobby Davro incident was, of course, real, but it was filmed at a BBC studio elsewhere in Manchester. Apparently, the footage has been used in BBC's health and safety videos ever since.
So it's really funny, not funny, but there's a bit at the end where it comes up with where they went wrong with what ultimately happened to Bobby. And the first thing is, last minute good idea.
The fire that gutted the studio did happen, and the Granada news footage about it that is shown later in the episode is also real. The story of Alan Starr and the news report about him from later on are both fake. But what about the exorcism? Surely this can't be real. Surely this was filmed for... No, that was real. That is really a priest performing an exorcism. This was only the year before, and the video was released to the press, so it was very much in the recent memory of many of the viewers. This was after a tribute band refused to play for the wrap party for the old Granada studios, due to supernatural occurrences during rehearsals, with the organisers stating that it was their last resort to ensure the band would play. Between this and them digging up the car park where the bodies are buried, is anyone else kind of glad that they didn't actually film this in Granada studios? Well, an unexploded bomb was excavated in Granada on the day of the broadcast. It might not have gone quite so according to plan.
Hello?
But if they were going to play fast and loose with the studio's legacy, why make it Granada? Why not make it a studio inspired by Granada and write a totally original history around it? Well, because they could tap into the existing knowledge about the studio and its hauntings in the audience's consciousness, adding a sense of reality to the threat and blurring the lines between which stories were true and which aren't.
And so, dare we take the reality of what's happened at Granada, albeit fudging it slightly, just to create something that might be, that people could then go and Google.
Reece then says there's a message from Mark from the League of Gentlemen WhatsApp group saying that they're on BBC Two now. Suspecting that means that the rehearsal tape is being broadcast, they turned on the TV to see themselves. They flick through the other channels to check, even showing today's news footage. Steve tells Reece to tweet asking if they are on BBC Two, which he actually does in real time.
Are me and Steve Pemberton on BBC Two now?
Although Reece's earlier reaction to Twitter was scripted, it was certainly the reaction of those watching. Of course, there have been plenty of shows that have had people reacting to it on Twitter in real time. Everything from Great British Bake Off to Happy Valley have their own hashtags where people can take part in live conversations. They aren't as in-depth as a platform like Reddit, but it's generally a bigger cross-section of casual viewers and hardcore fans, as well as being more spontaneous. There are live shows that have an even more interactive approach, such as The Last Leg, in which viewers tweet to ask the presenters and guests their opinions on news stories. However, this is hardly ever referenced directly within a narrative show. Reece may not be reading your exact tweets, but he is acknowledging you. You, the viewer, exists in the world of the story. They have had in universe materials like the League of Gentlemen local book and the Psychoville ARG, which are unfiction materials written from the perspective of characters that sweep you up into the world of their respective shows. However, they have never acknowledged the viewer as part of their world in one of their actual programmes before. On Twitter, you can still read the outrage and disappointment turning to shock and joy as it happened.
Ooh, a bit scared already.
Did anyone's sound just go out there?
Sound!
Oh dear, was that cut in sound deliberate? At first I thought it might have been, but now I'm not so sure.
Was certainly hoping this was part of the surprise. Turns out, no. just an actual technical issue. Sorry to hear they've had to can the live episodes of hashtag Inside Number 9.
Oh, that is devastating for them. What a bollocks. It's part of it!
Inside Number 9 Live had me saying to my girlfriend, "Oh no, I feel so bad for them. All that work, then this? Hook, line, sinker."
Hashtag Inside Number 9 Live equals Ghostwatch 2018. Freaking out, was totally sucked in with the sound issues, and you're all bloody bastard geniuses.
The official BBC Two Twitter account played along too, pretending to react to the situation in real time.
It's alive! Episode of Inside Number 9 tonight, 10 PM, BBC Two. A creepy voice saying help me, that is all kinds of nope. Well, this is awkward. Come on, techie guys, do your stuff. Sorry everyone, we're really not sure what's going on with Inside Number 9. Bear with us. Right, this might really affect our tweeting plan. Hashtag think on your feet, hashtag Inside Number 9. When it's live, anything can happen.
Whilst Reece's reactions may have been scripted, he did read condolences from a familiar friend.
And I had my phone on because I had to do my live tweet, and Darren Brown texted me going, "Oh my god, it's so fucking upsetting for you."
You even watch him tweet, which you yourself could see on Twitter and respond to. Not only did BBC Two respond to this, but Mark Gatiss, the very same Mark Gatiss who alerted them within the narrative that they were on air.
We were on tour when we were preparing it, so we told Mark and Jeremy, and we told him we were going to make this comment. He said, "Oh, do you want me to actually message you?" I was like, "No, what's the point of a private message?" Coming in at that exact time.
Expanding the story over social media meant that there was an added sense of immersion to the episode. You exist within the story, and are watching this happen to them in real time, adding a helpless sense of voyeurism to the experience. We are forced to witness what is happening to the main characters in real time, but are unable to help them, like this episode is our sleep paralysis demon. While Steve continues to fiddle with the remote, you get the rehearsal footage of the fake episode. Seemingly 15 minutes in, Arthur has dismembered the body of Reverend Neil and is discovered by Moira. He tells her that the vicar had murdered Elsie to get the money she left in her will.
She told me! Reece, can I just have a bit of a question here? No, it's just I'm not very clear about Moira's intentions.
As Reece and Steve bicker over Moira's intentions in this scene, you see someone out of focus, slowly walking towards the camera. We then see the studio footage again, with Stephanie sitting catatonic on the sofa. As Reece comes to update her on the fate of the broadcast, she tells him that Alan called. She says that he told her that there were spirits in the studio that were there long before it was built, and that they need to leave. Reece, of course, responds the only way a true Brit can to a situation like this, and goes to make her a cup of tea.
We have to leave.
The spirits choose to show her slitting her throat through the dressing room television, as Steve Pemberton looks at his phone, oblivious to whoever appears to be walking up to him. The spirits are clearly telling us that he is next. We get a CCTV shot of a new location, an electrical equipment storeroom. We then get another shot of a deserted control room. The monitors showing Stephanie's body turn themselves off, one by one. We then get a test card before we see more footage of Most Haunted, this time with the historian telling us that the studios were built over a graveyard where over 2,000 bodies were buried. After some CCTV footage of the studio kitchen, it cuts to the footage of The Exorcist telling the spirits they need to leave. You then see the POV footage of the GoPro on Reece's bicycle helmet as he makes Stephanie her cuppa. A lot of people will certainly recognise this first-person filming style as found footage. But in actuality, this whole episode has been found footage. According to the website Found Footage Critic, found footage films are feature-length movies, shorts or web series designed to have the look and feel of actual, non-fictional, filmed events that were lost and subsequently discovered and made available to the viewer. For a film to be considered as found footage, all of the cameras used to shoot the footage must have known sources within the film itself, i.e., all cameras are effectively props in the film. They also determined that they use one or more of the following cinematic approaches. First-person perspective, aka point of view style, filmed or recorded from the perspective of the main character who's experiencing the event while holding the camera. Mockumentary, aka pseudo-documentary style, filmed or recorded in the form of interviews and investigative reporting of the event. News footage style, footage from a professional news crew investigating the event. Surveillance footage style, footage from a stationary camera automatically filming or recording the event. Deadline uses 3 of them. Even the fake episode at the beginning is technically found footage because the cameras are diegetic, meaning that they exist in the story. The 2 had already experimented with found footage in the episode Cold Comfort, which was filmed entirely with CCTV footage. It does create an uncomfortable sense of voyeurism, and the viewer is likely to find themselves with their eyes darting between the 4 camera feeds as the tension rises. However, Deadline fully embraces the effect the format has on the audience in horror.
And now, academic literature.
In his article for Gothic Studies, Mimesis of Media, Found Footage in the Horror of the Real, Neil McRobert argues that found footage is such an effective medium for horror because of the implication that the filmic world is the same as the audience is. Despite the subject matter of found footage horror, such as ghosts and aliens not being original, where found footage differs from conventional horror films is in the suggestion that the images caught on camera have taken place in the audience's reality and that, whilst the viewer may be detached from the threat geographically and temporally, they are ontologically commensurate with the events depicted. When discussing found footage, research professor Angela Nadalianis said that the participant is invited to literally play and become part of a performance as if it's real. Again, this element of play was a big part of the live broadcast. In his review of found footage movie Apollo 18, prolific American literary critic John Kenneth Moore said that found footage works best when it transports you so successfully into another life that you begin to get a little panicky yourself, like you are actually there and unsafe. The use of diegetic music is also very effective. Obviously, most found footage films don't include a musical score in order to maintain their illusion. Christian Henson obviously started off with orchestral string loops when scoring the fake episode, but you may not have even realised the atmospheric electrical buzzing that scores the rest of the show. It's like we can hear the spirits getting stronger and stronger as they feed off the energy of the studio.
Then we go into this kind of hyper-reality, and they didn't really want music that sounded like music, so I discussed the idea of using kind of generator sounds and compressor sounds to make, I guess, music concrete, that blurred line between something that is an atmosphere and something that is a tone, but being able to apply them to the piece, not like, just firing in an atmosphere like a Grams op would, by actually being able to perform them in live to picture.
Reece hears a noise and follows it into the electrical supply room around the corner, not noticing the door slowly closing itself behind him. He goes towards what appears to be a vague silhouette of a hanging figure, but nothing is there. However, when he turns back around, he sees his head prop from the episode staring back at him from the ground.
Fucking hell! God, you fuck up!
As he and Steve natter away, the ghosts finally strike.
Steve! Steve!
You may have noticed during my synopsis that I went from calling the writers Pemberton and Shearsmith to Steve and Reece. And this was not by accident. Parasocial relationships are weird. It makes some people do crazy things, so I'm always very conscious of this, and I try to emotionally distance myself when I go down one pop culture rabbit hole or another. This is why I refer to the full names or surnames of people I discuss in these videos whenever possible, and tend to refer to them by their first names only when they are playing themselves. I'm not going down the pub with Reece and Steve for pie and mash and a pint of Perry. That's never going to happen. However, there's an unavoidable sense of artificial familiarity when you spend hours and hours watching not only their work, but their video diaries and interviews with them.
Purely in an investigatory capacity, of course.
I mean, seriously, I've watched these two argue over which version of Microsoft Windows they have.
I haven't got Windows 95.
You have?
You've got old Windows.
I've got Windows 98.
I'm sorry. What you are labouring under is Windows
95.
It is not.
But I installed Windows 98, didn't I?
Much like a popular fictional character, long-term fans can't help but get a sense of who these people are. And by that I mean Reece grumpy, Steve less grumpy. They like scary things. So, am I reading too much into this, or are Pemberton and Shearsmith aware of the fact that long-term fans would have a sense of attachment to them, and therefore have a heightened sense of investment in them as characters? Well, the answer to both of those questions is probably yes. Needless to say, considering the first third of the episode was setting up fake characters for a fake episode, they had very little time to establish the victims of the ghosts, alongside establishing the history of the hauntings. If you are thinking, well, of course they couldn't possibly create characters you care about in that short space of time, then you have never seen Inside Number 9. Go and wash your mouth out with 12 Days of Christine and Merrily Merrily. These two are at the top of their game as writers. However, in this episode, you are not watching Steve and Reece have fascinating conversations and making character-defining decisions. We're watching them discuss the fact there's no longer a BBC Three, scrolling through Twitter, and wondering if they will get paid a repeat fee for a quiet night in. We can have an established connection with these characters as we watch them have these obliviously mundane conversations. While Shearsmith and Pemberton have been known to subtly smuggle in references to their previous work for fans, more of them appear here than usual. Although this may simply be because this live episode was already a treat for fans, I think it may actually be to remind fans of who they are watching. The first is Arthur's phone number, which fans from their breakout show League of Gentlemen will recognise.
Well, she can reach me on 444-4244.
That's easy to remember.
444-4244, that's right. You see, you know it already.
Some fans will also remember that this was Shearsmith and Pemberton's actual phone number when they used to live together.
Hello, 444-4244.
With the League of Gentlemen anniversary specials and the reunion tour only the year prior, the show would have been very fresh in the memories of many of the viewers. The hair is easier to spot than usual. It's not the most obvious appearance, but it is very rarely shown in a shot as close as this. I don't think there's any way of noticing that the hair is a recurring feature of the show unless you were told by someone. It's very subtle, and I always miss it. The fact that Pemberton and Shearsmith are playing themselves harks back to the League of Gentlemen's apocalypse, and viewers may be wondering if they meet the same fate.
I have the two remaining writers. One remaining writer.
Of course, the League is name-dropped when they say that Mark Gatiss has messaged them through the League WhatsApp group. They didn't just say that a random friend or family member watching the show had contacted them. It's the person we know they have worked with since their 20s, and have seen them work alongside for years. He's also the most famous of their two League co-writers, as Jeremy Dyson was not a performer, and therefore Gatiss is much better known. Arthur chopping up the vicar's body in the bath is reminiscent not only of a similar moment in Psychoville, but of Highgate House of Horror, a horror comedy short film the League made when they were in their 20s, in which the main character is similarly interrupted by someone coming over and discovering the dismembered remains. Speaking of remains, as soon as the head appeared, I couldn't help but wonder if Reece Shearsmith asked if he could have a severed head in this, because he was secretly jealous of Pemberton already having one from the Psychoville Halloween special. We even get a name drop of the series that Inside Number 9 is eternally compared to.
No, you're thinking of Black Mirror, Stephanie. This is Inside Number 9. It's more dark comedy and twists.
All of these little references combined together actively remind the audience of who these characters are. I'm not saying that those who aren't regulars to the show won't get anything from the episode, but I think there's an added sense of fear from the fact that it draws on the collective knowledge of the fans watching. It adds a sense of realism because these characters are real. There's a part of me that can't help but think, oh no! Who's going to voice Mr. Curry in The Adventures of Paddington now? I mean, 90% of it is just because he's a bloody brilliant actor, but I think there's something that feels so much more disturbing hearing Reece Shearsmith screaming as himself rather than a character screaming. I suppose it's also an advantage that he doesn't have to worry about whether or not the screams are consistent with the character voice. He can just properly shriek at the top of his lungs.
Steve!
Steve! There's been an accident!
It then cuts to the news footage about Alan Starr, including a clip of the electronic voice phenomena he recorded. It then cuts to the news footage about the fire before returning to the studio. As he runs for help, Reece finds Stephanie's body before the lights cut out and his camera switches to night vision. He climbs up the gallery, away from the spectral figures in the graveyard set, only to be scared by a ghost at the top of the stairs, causing him to fall to his death. After we see a flicker of the ghosts, it abruptly cuts to a clip of Reece and Steve on BBC One's long-running magazine show, The One Show, an appearance many fans would have watched only a few days earlier. They are asked whether or not they believe in the supernatural.
No. I like the idea. I like the idea of ghosts, but I'm very aware that they're not real.
Although this One Show interview was set up so that they had this clip to feature in the episode, it does correlate with Shearsmith's previous comments on whether or not he believes in ghosts, once again tapping into fans' existing knowledge of them.
I love the idea of it, and I've been obsessed with it since I was little. But I think the power of the mind is everything. Me, Mark and Steve and Jeremy went and stayed in a haunted house last year. And I got scared. I was probably the one who was nearly ready to believe in it. But it was me, just me getting scared in a room in an attic that I'd been told there was devil worship and children abuse and it was all these horrible goings on. And I think your mind runs away with you and you just, you create it all yourself.
By the way, that League of Gentlemen ghost chase thing you mentioned is on YouTube and it's hilarious. It then cuts to their deaths in a quiet night in, looping over and over as the distortion gets more intense. It cuts to black, and we are finally addressed by the ghosts directly.
Let us be.
And with that, it's all over. But the spirit of play lives on.
Has Inside Number 9 Live finished yet? I've been watching it for 23 hours straight now, and I'm not sure.
Not only were people tweeting their condolences, but the victims' Wikipedia pages were updated with the dates and causes of their on-screen deaths. Whilst many fans at first thought that this was yet another part of their elaborate hoax, this was actually nothing to do with them. It was the fans doing, continuing the spirit of play long after the live show had ended. From the look of Twitter, it also looks like there were people who were unnerved enough by the episode that they were slightly anxious to see if Pemberton and Shearsmith would ever tweet again, but thankfully the former would post a photo of himself alive and well a few days later. Wait, what's that? Deadline blurred the lines between fact and fiction to tap into our most primal fears, using a combination of the audience's collected knowledge and the strengths of found footage to invite us into an intense, engaging and spine-tingling experience. At least now, viewers can watch the series assured that such an elaborate and disturbing prank would never be pulled off by Inside Number 9 again. Right? If you want to learn more about the wonderful works of Shearsmith and Pemberton, you can watch my review of their much underrated previous series, Psychoville, right here. See you soon.
But what's this? These then?
These are 95s, they're like
pieces of slate.
Spectrum. Sinclair C5.
Chalk with scratches on.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter, does it?
No.
Still reading, can you?